Alien Romulus 2024. A handful of young, disgruntled colonist workers steal a mining hauler to pull a heist on their company's research vessel so that they can all abandon their contracts with their employer. Luckily, the company has a failsafe in place to make these thieves' lives a living nightmare.
Okay, you say the company has a failsafe to keep their lives a living nightmare. Like, are you talking about the alien on the space station?
Pretty much, yeah. It's just the aliens going to murder everybody.
Fair. Okay, so that brings up a decent question that I have: is if this planet is run by Weyland-Yutani, I assume they have a spaceship so they can do like hauling from one location to another. Like it's a work ship essentially, and they're not allowed to actually just get up and leave. Why does Weyland-Yutani not notice that there is a giant space station in orbit when like these kids figured it out? Like that was a big thing where I'm like, can't Weyland-Yutani go up and check this? Like this is a massive resource of theirs. You'd think that they'd want to go get it, unless they know what happened on the ship and then it's a death trap and they're just like, F it, let orbit handle it.
They have not shied away from death traps ever, it seems. So
True.
I don't
That's
know
a fair
why
point.
they didn't just get on this ship ASAP. In my mind, it doesn't make any sense.
Cool. Okay, I'm glad I didn't miss something.
In a lot of the content that is outside of the cinema, there is this black site lab. That's what they always are. Super duper secret. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're against all the rules. And if anybody were to find out what was going on in there, the company would be in big trouble. And so a lot of times, nobody knows that that's happening, right? It's against regulations and stuff. And that's the only logical explanation I can come up for. And they don't mention anything like that in this movie. They could have put in a simple bit of dialogue to explain this problem away. There's lots of clever ways that you could be like, hey, we couldn't go do it. It wasn't allowed, or nobody's supposed to know we're here, or we're in big trouble, or whatever. But they don't ever say anything about that. And it's like, why don't they just fly up there and grab their stuff? Why?
I mean, in this iteration of Alien, I kind of feel like it's similar to Alien 3, Alien 2. There's just an egg on Alien 3 on the ship randomly, and you just accept it. And this one is, they, one in a bazillion chance, pulled this alien from the first Alien movie out of space. You know what?
Yeah.
They just happened upon it, and they
really
they
didn't like
it.
the wreckage of the Nostromo being clustered together. Now, keep in mind, this is right after the Nostromo wrecked, so it hasn't been 50 years or anything like that. But it's still a lot of time. Enough time that it's not going to be clustered the size of a Ziploc bag. Like, it's going to be spread over gazillions of miles of space. Now, I know, like, every science fiction movie does a space dogfight where they're flying right by each other. And the reality is, if you were going to have a space fight, you'd be going over millions of kilometers, shooting missiles that didn't connect with their target for days or something. So I get it. They shrink it down. But they put the freaking frozen alien space peanut right in the middle of all that stuff too.
I know.
Couldn't they fly past the Nostromo wreckage written on the side of the ship and then fly a little ways further and go find it? Like just a little bit?
Yeah.
Well, and like I'm gonna have a clip here of the explosion. Like everything from that ship should be liquefied.
Just vaporized.
And whatever is left is flying at 1,000,000 miles per second in every direction for 20 years in space, so there's no gravity to slow it down. Like, nothing should be anywhere close to the wreckage of the Nostromo, let alone close to each other. Like, it doesn't make a lick of sense, but it's science fiction, and this is how we need to find an alien, so be it.
Dive in this film. Don't worry. I've got my scene I'm just waiting to jump in on, where I get really pissed about physics, just getting shit all over.
Acid blood?
Don't get there yet, Dan.
All right, fair enough. Oh my goodness.
So they wanted the dumbest of their viewers to understand that they found the Nostromo wreckage, picked up the alien carcass, which was frozen in space, took it to a space station and cracked it open. I don't like the way they showed it. I think they could have done a little bit better job there. I would have taken some dialogue on a computer screen that says, the space probe found the wreckage of the Nostromo and then later picked up the alien and brought it to the space station, and then go into the space station scene. That would have been fine with me. We've seen them explain stuff as dialogue on a computer screen, the typing out. And that would have been fine with me. Other than that, them cracking open the egg was the space peanut thing was really kind of cool. I like that on the ship. That looked neat. It's kind of fun. And of course, and right now I'm gonna tell you guys, the scoring on this movie scored 100 for me. It was perfectly scored. The music was amazing. Yeah. The sound effects were amazing. And so the buildup of sound when they're cracking that thing open, the sound of that laser getting more intense and all that, and they pop that lid and the music builds up and the camera pans under and you see the alien outline in the shell was way cool.
The music is incredibly hard. The sound, I guess, is incredibly hard for me as well. And I was thinking of you while I was watching this because so many of those space scenes were maybe not entirely quiet, but super muted. Yeah, and I was just like, oh, Run's gonna like this.
I liked it, yes.
Yeah, the idea of devoid of sound, right?
Yeah. Yep. And it worked really well. Like it really did. Ironically, in the vastness of space, it almost made it feel kind of claustrophobic. Like you were kind of like locked in those moments where it was super quiet. I really liked that.
There's another sequence that we'll get to where we'll talk about some sound and we'll come back to this big time because the sound was amazing. Go ahead, Will. What were you saying?
No worries. Let's just say now that we're talking about some good points, I feel like Fede, is his name Fede Alvarez, the director, writer, is great. He also did the Evil Dead remake that we watched. He does a great job of bringing us back and making us feel like we are in the movie that we loved. In this case, we've got all the light buttons on the ships. Everything looks dated. Everything looks like the same technology that we left Alien when we watched it. And I think Alvarez does a really good job of bringing those worlds back to life in a really good way. Lots of practical effects in this movie, done really well. And yeah, I can't compliment him enough on that. Other writing things, I may have other issues with.
I noticed the same thing with the ship. I'm going to just kind of take that ball and run with it for a second. Because not only are you right, it does do a great job of looking much more like the 1979 original than Prometheus or Covenant do. But kind of like we discussed, I didn't have a problem with that because the ship in 1979, the Nostromo, is like a mining ship. It's being run into the ground. That thing might have been around for like a century or something. It who cares if it doesn't work 100% properly? So that can be really old. Whereas the ship in Prometheus is holding the president of the Weyland-Yutani company. Well, just the Weyland company at that point, I guess. It makes sense that it'd be like a luxury ship. Like it would look so much better. And then again, in this one, we're going back in time. Well, I guess forward in time from Prometheus, but whatever. But again, it's this little ship that these like kids on a dirt planet are running around in. It makes sense that it's not high tech. It kind of worked for me. And even visually, it looks like the Nostromo, but it still looks better than a 1979 version of the Nostromo. You know what I mean? Like it looks like the technology makes sense for the universe, but brought forward. Whereas like Prometheus, they just said, F it, like it looked science fiction-y.
Right. Yeah, Weyland drove a Cadillac. They're driving a Pinto.
Yeah, overall, I didn't mind the difference between the Prometheus effects and futuristic looking things for the most part. Some of like the spacesuit stuff I wasn't too keen on, but they didn't wear them for most of it, so who cares? But yeah, I felt like, and I feel like Alvarez does a really good job of finding those details and ensuring those details are accurate to the originals and making us feel like we're back in that world. I think it does a really good job. And I think other movies don't even think about those things, like other franchises a lot of times. So you do get like, why is the tech so much more advanced when it's in the past or whatever future or same time period? Star Wars comes to mind when I think of those things.
Sure.
But Alvarez did a really good job of making this feel authentic to the Alien universe in the time it was set in.
No,
Yeah,
I completely agree.
he blended several of the movies into this in several different ways. Right from
Oh,
the jump, though, he blends the original Alien movie. We have the ships, right? We have a lot of the same music and scoring again, that they take the original stuff and they build on it and they blend it and they adapt it to different scenarios. It was beautifully done. Sounded amazing. And then you have a little piece of like if you watch, there's a little something from every movie in this. He
The
took a little bit from
couldn't
everything.
I couldn't find something from Resurrection, but I got something from every movie except
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no, I guess.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
dude.
If you're gonna talk about the monster at the end,
Sure.
okay.
There you
Okay.
go.
But I mean,
Sorry.
like, there's a direct 1-for-1 in other categories. You got Ash from the first movie. You've got a couple of quotes in Game Over, Man, and Get Away From Her, You Bitch from Aliens.
Which I
You've
hated
got-
the Get Away From Her, You Bitch.
Oh, that
It
was the
such
worst.
a terrible delivery. That was so
Well,
Such
bad.
an unnecessary. If he just said "Get Away From Her," I would have been
Would've been
okay
great.
with it.
Leave
And then he's
that
like,
out.
"You bitch," and he
They
did like
worked
the
with
stutter.
absence of sound. Use the absence of sound here.
Yeah.
You know what's supposed to be there. Let our imagination
Yeah.
fill that last word in. It would have been great. He had no reason to use that word there. It was dumb. I did not like that.
Yeah, everything about that bothered me. Everything else I was kind of okay with. Like the Game Over, Man, when he's playing the little arcade game, I was okay with that. Bringing Ash back, I thought they actually did a really good job with that. I thought he looked fantastic, especially for an
gotta
actor who's
disagree
no longer
Ash
with us.
with Rook. I got to disagree with Rook.
What's that?
Okay, when you watch this, and of course I've watched this like 7 times now. When you watch it and you see the like full shot of Rook
Oh, he
sitting
looked
on the
bad.
table talking to them, it's very well lit. It's very bright. And for me, it put
It's
it in the
very
uncanny
CGI.
valley because I could
Yes.
see it too well and it bothered me. They should have made it much more darker because when you see everybody else in the room, it's a very dark room. It's not very well lit. So for some reason, when they show him and show his face and they're trying to show off what a great special effect they did, it's way too bright and I can see it too clearly. And then everybody else is dark. It was not good. I did not like the way they did that. I wish they would have put it in shadow, made it hard to see. Learn from Alien 1. You barely see the alien at all because they make it dark and they cover things because they didn't have the tech to do it right. We still don't have the tech to bring Ash back to life as the character Rook, and they shouldn't have tried so hard. They should have hit it more.
I'll agree that there's a little bit of uncanny valley there, but honestly, it didn't bother me as much. Like it, I thought
I'm
that
glad
it was
they
a
took the
smart
swing.
way of
I just
bringing.
wish they would have hit it better.
I thought it was smart to bring back that robot because we've seen them use the same robots over and over again with David and Walter, potentially with Bishop. Although I think we did conclude that was a human at the end of the movie. So the fact that like they would be using the form of Ash with different names made sense, and obviously, is it Ian Holm?
Yes,
is
Ian
no
Holm.
longer with us at the time of this recording. Also, I did not realize that Ash is Bilbo Baggins. That threw me for a loop when I looked that one up. So I
Ian
thought,
Holm
like,
is Bilbo Baggins. Yes.
yeah, to do it as well as they did, could they have done it better? Sure. Could they have hidden it a little better? Sure. But it didn't take me out of the movie at all. I've only seen it once. I haven't seen it 7 times yet. But the first time that I watched this, I thought it was a pretty good effect, and I thought it did what it needed to do very, very well.
I felt it hit the brakes for me. It took me right out when I first saw it. I was like, I appreciate you trying. That's cool, but you guys failed on this one. Will, what did you think of it?
I'm of mixed feeling. So Alvarez did the right thing. He contacted Ian Holm's wife and family to ensure that it was okay to use his likeness and to mimic his vocals to play this part in the movie. And they gave his blessing, and I'm sure they probably got some money out of it somewhere down the line. So that was good. He went about it the right way. Was it necessary? I don't think so. I think it could have been any different android or synthetic being, could have been there and done that. And I agree, it is Uncanny Valley. When they do the full-on face dub CGI, it looks wrong. And it does take me out because if you want to honor somebody like that, you want it perfect. And you just can't quite get it there yet, I don't think. So Run's suggestion of shadowing it more, or even later in the film, he's mostly on like the display screens, and it's like all grainy and things, and that, you know, gives you head and shoulders a better picture or a more believable picture of this android. But overall, yeah, it hit me, and it did take me out on first viewing for sure. And then you just kind of learn to accept it, I think, and it is what it is. I just don't think Rook had to be the likeness of Ian Holm, but they have done that in the past, right? Obviously, the Bishop in Alien, kind of, well, which was it? Alien
3.
3, and
3 is where
Aliens.
you see Bishop.
Aliens and Alien 3, and then obviously with Walter and David in the.
At least it wasn't Fassbender, right? I think that
would have been weird. That would have been weird.
That would have been weirder.
The other thing about bringing in, I can keep calling him Ash. I know it's Rook. Bringing Ian Holmes, I guess, is if you are familiar with the series. Like if this is your first Alien movie, then you might be.
You'll never know.
Yeah. But if you're familiar with it, there's an instant sense of malice in his character. Like, you know, he's going to do what's right for the company, and he doesn't care about the human casualties involved. And it kind of just gets you there instantly. Now, I guess if you're familiar with the franchise, you just know that about the androids, period, or the synthetics, period. But
artificial persons, Dan, they prefer.
Sure, whatever. I knew there was the right term, and I was blanking on it. It just didn't hit me as negatively as I guess it did for you guys. It wasn't my favorite part of the movie, but it was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and I moved on with my life.
Maybe a part of it too is, like you guys were saying, they have a little bit of almost every movie in this, and I think they tried to mix too many things into this drink overall. So maybe that was just one of the
like the
stack
like
of
the
things
last
that
third
for
of the
me
movie
that I was just
could
like
have been left out of this recipe.
Whew, oh boy, we're going here now. Where else are we going?
No, let's get there.
I agree with you.
We got another great sequence that I'd love to bring up if that's okay.
Sure.
Real positive one. This was just absolutely epic. I watched trailers and clips and behind the scenes of this. It's the face huggers in this movie. Lots and lots of face huggers in a variety of different ways, and there were some super intense moments. The director talks about giving the audience hope because it makes the situation more scary, because you're like on the edge of your seat, like if they could just get there. And when they're trapped in that room and that door's open just a little bit and they're trying to wake up Andy so that he can get them out, and the face huggers are swimming through the water under their feet, and the sound's building and the lights are going off and people are screaming and the intensity just keeps building. Fantastic sequence. The Andy wakes up and he's obviously a little different, but you don't notice quite that yet. And then the door shuts and some of the facehuggers get through. The glass breaks. They all get through. All of them skittering down the halls. They switch to special effects, but you don't even notice it here because you've been watching the practical effects from the first one up close. And this is running down a darkly lit hall, and it looks great. It looks fantastic. And all these things are skittering after them, and they're running and screaming, and the sound's building. And they make it into the next room and just barely close the doors in time. It was epic scene right there. Later, we have another facehugger scene where they're trying to go through the room, and it's the body temperature thing. And I wasn't sure if I really liked the idea, but it was certainly a very fun sequence to watch.
Kept
when
the
they went
tension.
through there. Yes, it was very, very tense. Lots of little plot holes in that one, but man, it was a good one. It was really fun to watch.
For my money, and I didn't pay anything to see this. For my money, the stars of this movie are Andy and the facehuggers.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Yep.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the facehugger scenes, pretty much every scene the facehuggers win, they were so much creepier than they've ever been. They literally, like, this is the first Alien movie to actually, I don't want to say scare me, but like have tension. Like where I actually was not quite sure who was going to make it, what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And like, you're actually nervous. The facehuggers were so much more spider-like in this, and there were so many more of them. They really were effective in their role. The room that they had to heat up didn't really make a whole lot of sense because, like, okay, if you're heating up this one room, the second you open up that door, you're losing all the heat you just built up. So it's like
the hallway is now equal with temperature. He mentions that in a line of dialogue that the hallway.
He does. They heat up the hallway.
Yes.
I thought they were only heating up the room.
No, they're heating up both rooms, and he says the hallway is now the equal temperature with the interior room we can travel in.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I noticed that on my second viewing too, because I thought the same thing, but he does mention that in a little line.
Okay, fair enough. That helps with one of the little holes I had, but
What's the guy getting on the freaking radio for?
Oh,
he's
my
like,
God.
Oh yeah, the keys are in the glove box. Like, shut up, dude. Like, just move through.
we'll
the
be there
room.
in a minute. Shut up.
Like, he doesn't know what's going on the end of that radio call, so he shouldn't be that eager to tell her about the keys. Yeah, she's panicking and stuff, but like, he doesn't know what's really
exactly what's
happening
going
over
on.
there.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
So it did that. Yeah, a little bit of plot hole, but man, it was cool watching. And
Do you
then when
wanna-
they jump at each other?
Now that we're talking about the face huggers, and I love them so much, do you want to hear my initial write-up that I've deemed unworthy and maybe inappropriate?
Oh yes,
Always.
if it's inappropriate, hit us.
Let's take the alien from the original and add all the aliens from the sequel. Then toss in the abomination from the resurrection, slather it with the black goo from Prometheus, and jam it down the audience's throat with multiple face hugger deep throating scenes.
Oh, come on, Dan. Edit that one in front.
I mean, if you hadn't said anything, that would have been easier.
Sorry. That was amazing, though. I love that. When they pull
We got
that one
options
off
now.
of Navarro and the thing's coming out of her throat.
Oh,
that was great.
man.
That thing was in there.
Yeah. Okay, and since we're talking about Navarro, I think when Navarro's chest bursts open and the music cuts out and the pregnant chick lets loose that scream
Yeah.
into the silence, I haven't heard a good movie scream like that in a decade. That just amazed me. I've got goosebumps when I'm talking about it. Right now. I've got goosebumps. Such an amazing scream. The sound built up to that cuts out and she lets loose that amazing scream. And then the sound comes back in and they kick the throttle and the ship's crashing and things are blowing up and lights are flashing in sequences. It was an incredibly tense moment, and I loved that scene. I loved her scream for that. I'd like to see that actress who had a very small role in this movie. I'd like to see if she could do other stuff like this. I want to see what she could do.
I've only seen it the one time, but that chest burster scene was quite different from other ones, right? Like the chest, like it kind of popped open
A little at the
and then
top.
it kind of like slowly crept out as opposed to like, kabam, I'm here.
Yeah.
And it was like, somehow that made it worse. Like somehow that was just like,
yeah.
okay.
it
Like it's
wasn't
almost like the Jurassic Park egg. Like they just like break through and then kind of like slowly work their way out as opposed to like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
okay.
they just wanted that
Da-da-da-da-da.
splash of blood on the girl, and then they needed a pause moment. They didn't want that alien to be stealing the show because everything cut out, and your focus was purely on that girl screaming, and it was really cool. But you're right, it wasn't the chest bursting scene I was expecting, but I'm not sure that I hate it. I'm not
I
sure
didn't
that
hate it at all.
I think
No,
the different approach makes sense because we've seen how many chest bursting scenes now, right? So
Right.
you have to do something different, and breaking it up with that nice, chilling scream is really good to get you back into that moment.
Yep. Okay. So some really good moments, and I'm not sure if this is a bad moment, but we do have a sequence in the gestation of the alien that is completely new to the entire franchise. What did you think about baby alien cocooning and then popping out as a full-grown alien?
Right, the one that gets he tries to abort with the
Yeah,
taser
tries to
gun.
give him the cattle prod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time because in previous installments they've seen like skin as if like shedding like a snake. We've never seen a gestation egg for growth, right? This is the 1st time. So I don't know how I felt about it. I was like, it's different. It's fine. It was a fun scene, except for he was so stupid that he didn't get out of the way of all this acid dripping
Right.
down
He just
on him.
laid there as more and more dripped onto him. I'm like,
But you
okay,
don't
even
really
if you're
like
burning,
him, so you don't care that
roll.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop, drop, and roll. I guess they don't teach you that on freaking colonies. I don't know.
I don't know if it entirely works for acid, but at least get out of the way of more acid.
At least gets you out of the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I didn't mind it. It looked cool. And like the tail coming out to like slash at him, it looked cool. Does it fit within the franchise? I guess it does now.
Yeah.
All I could think of, like I thought of Brian every time there was like quiet in the outside of space, and then we get to this scene, and I could not help but think of Will and the comments he's going to be making because, like, I don't know, I'm the first one to bring it up, I guess, but like, did that not look like a vagina giving birth?
That's why I said he tried to
100%.
abort it.
I know. Okay.
Yeah.
That was one of those like, oh, Will's gonna have a comment on this one. The internet's not gonna like it.
Yeah, that was
I'm
terrible.
glad.
Okay.
I'm glad I'm teaching you the ways, though.
Yeah.
And he cattle prods the thing inside there until it melts his little laser gun. And later in the movie, we have an alien who has blue electricity trickling inside its skull. And I was like, fucking Highlander, we just can't get away from this blue electricity.
I completely missed that. I'll have to check that out on my next viewing.
Just a little quick one, but yep, we had blue electricity in it.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
As far as the actual scene goes, I didn't mind it if it hadn't been the 7th movie that introduced it. Like the idea that they go somewhere to grow, I actually really, really liked, as opposed to we just saw in Covenant, it goes from like this big to like 10 feet tall in 8 minutes. And it's like, I liked this better. I liked the gestation period. Somebody mentioned it's they're kind of like the gremlins, right? Like they kind of have to go into that pod and then they come out fully formed. It's like, I kind of like that. I kind of like that they need a human host, they need a biological host to grow to their first stage, and then they need to like hit that next level. I was like, I'm cool with it. I don't know why this is the 7th movie and we're seeing it for the first time, but other than
I've never
that,
seen
I didn't
anything in that in comic books. That was all new to me. I was trying to find some stuff on it where that's happened elsewhere. From what I understand, they wanted to add this and make it canon. This was a new thing, and they wanted to just put it in there.
That said, it was a real quick turnaround in this movie too, from like sticking it in the body to popping it out of the body to getting full grown. Like that was quick turnaround, and I didn't really understand why, because there was like a dozen other aliens already on the ship. Like you didn't have to do that, and it just adds to the inconsistencies of timelines on that.
They immediately made them sit in the hall and wait for the heater to warm up. Why couldn't we have had the heater warm up scene happen and then the alien gestate out of her chest? You could give a little bit more time for that to happen. Because it was like, they pulled that thing out of her throat, she walks down the hall, and it pops out her chest. We've never seen one that fast. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was crazy.
We're not really sure about the time frame on Covenant, but I felt like that was relatively quickly too when it pops out of the captain.
Yeah.
Like the time frame from when the captain gets face hugged to that thing is a full grown alien feels like half an hour tops. Like
Covenant's timelines were all over the place too from a lot of things I felt.
The alien movies in general are pretty all over the place. There's not a ton of consistency.
Which is funny though, because Alien was pretty like, oh, he had the facehugger on him. Like they documented it, right? Like they set a pretty good timeline for it. So it was weird that it's varied so much over time.
And the facehugger falls off. He gets up, walks around like a totally normal person. And it's not until it's breaking out of his chest that he's even like, I think something's wrong. Whereas like the dog in 3 is getting sick for a while before something happens. Most of the other people, like the facehugger's still on their face almost and the thing's popping out of their chest. Yeah. Like it's getting faster and faster despite, well, anyways, whatever.
It's a pacing thing, obviously, for movies, but it does rub you the wrong way when you're trying to, as inquisitive minds do, try to sorting out rules,
and I like it when they're consistent. And if you have to do it for dramatic effect, I get it. But if it's all over the place, it does kind of take you out. You're just like, all right, what's going on in this one? Nope, it's gone. Cool.
All right, may I ask?
No.
Did any of you like any of the characters in this movie?
Andy.
I liked it's not Daniels, is it? Is it Daniels and Andy?
No, Rain.
Daniels was Covenant.
Rain and Andy.
I like Rain and Andy well enough.
Rain wasn't terrible. Right. I didn't mind her. I would say I liked Rain better than I liked Daniels.
I agree. And part of that is because you establish them at the beginning, and that's really the only two you establish, which kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I think they could have given us more time to really find some character in the other people.
Yeah, they could have expanded a bit more. What was it? The cousin who his parents had been wronged by a synthetic.
Yeah,
I was like, like this guy's super dick. I hate his guts. I want him to die. And then
Right.
you know why. And I'm like, okay, but I still don't know this character.
Yeah,
Like you haven't given me enough time. Like I like what you're doing. This, oh, I hate him, but here's a reason why he is this way. Okay, that's cool. Let's elaborate on it a little bit more though, at least a bit. The pregnant
would have been
chick,
okay if you liked
don't
him.
know anything about her at all. She never gets hardly any lines, nothing.
Yeah, it would have been okay if you liked him and he was nice to everybody else, but a dick to Andy. And because you like Andy, that kind of makes you conflicted about the character. But he's just kind of a dick all around.
Yeah, he's a
and
dick
you're
all
just like,
around.
I'm very okay with this guy dying as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And thankfully he does.
I just felt overall in the last handful of Alien movies, they've really neglected the characters. And this movie at least went back to kind of the basics of small crew so that, you know who they are. Like in Alien, that's why we liked Alien. It was this small crew of relatable people. You got to know them a little bit throughout the movie. You understood how, their personalities, clashed with each other, or who was, friends with each other. You got that all in Alien. Sure, it was a little slower pace getting started, but I think the payoff is you care about these characters more when they get destroyed by aliens in multiple gruesome ways. And then the last few installments, this one included, at least they went kind of smaller, which is nice because it gives you the opportunity to learn about the characters, but they just didn't do that. Instead, they were more interested in giving them one-off lines from other movies. And I really felt it took away from like me wanting be invested in this movie in general.
Yeah, I agree. The only characters I did get invested with were Andy and Rain, and Rain was just like, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
She's had a tough life and she's trying to move on and everything, but it didn't really go anywhere. Andy was the character who I was so amazed at his acting as an android that's defective to this robust, like,
yes, that was a great transformation.
He's emotionless in both cases, but for some reason you sense the lack of empathy in the second version, the Wayland version.
Yeah.
And it almost, you start transposing emotions on him that don't exist. Such a complex character, such a complex role to play. Absolutely nailed it. Could not have done better. It was such a stellar performance.
He could have not said "you bitch."
That's true, but that's not his fault. That's not his fault. They wrote that in there, and it sucked. And it was a terrible line. The absence of that word would have made that delivery so amazing to me. I wish they would have done that. I can't wait to see the sequel because there is supposed to be a sequel to Romulus, and I'm hoping he's in it. And I want to see more of him.
I mean, no, historically, it's going to be Rain. He's going to die off camera, and she's going to have a new companion for the rest of the movie. Like, every Alien movie is just like, let's have this one character and murder everybody else where we can't even see them. Like,
and there will be some alien hitchhiker on her ship because they can't think of a better way to...
In Prometheus and Covenant, it's kind of goes the opposite. You get the alien, the synthetic
android,
surviving, and the girl dies off camera. So maybe we get Andy and Rain goes away.
It's kind of interesting to me, the push to make the synthetics, the androids, the most likable characters in the last 3 installments at least. Even in like Alien Resurrection, Bishop was more of a personable android, and you felt like you could trust them almost, but you can still question it a little bit in that one because everything we know about androids up until that point was their bad news. Or maybe I'm talking about the second one. I
was going to say, like, Bishop's not in
Resurrection. Yeah, sorry. Second one. I've watched too many Alien movies. But it's just like so interesting that the franchise has really pushed the AI being more human than humans in the writing. And I don't know if that's purposeful. I feel like it's not. I feel like it's a mistake because it doesn't play well. You can't invest in these characters that you don't care about. But the AI, you do. Like Andy, like you said, he's played really well at the start. He's defective, but you like care for him because he's there for his sister. He's programmed to be there. He's programmed to have these jokes. all these dad jokes, but it's like you feel that connection, you feel like they're family, and then the switch flip when he gets the update, you're like, oh yeah, he is an android and he doesn't have those emotions. That's us putting it on him, and that's a really cool flip. And then it makes you question, should she go back for him? Is it worth it? And all you do is care about whether you care about this robot or not. Yeah. And that's like really interesting. But I feel like it still falls flat against, do we actually care about Rain that much? Do we care about her ex-boyfriend? Do we care about Kay, who I think got knocked up by her cousin? I just don't know, because it's so poorly written that I just don't care. So it's like a really mind-boggling concept, or like when they were writing this, why it's why
it suffers from a lot of the same problems that Covenant suffered from, where you have these really cool sequences that don't quite make sense, and if you take them individually, you have a lot of fun. But if you want to learn more about these characters as a whole, or have these sequences flow together in a logical, direction, they don't really do that. And then on top of that, we have a couple of issues which I would like to now speak about, which is the physics issue of the alien bath in 0G.
1 second before you get there, because I do want to touch on something Will mentioned about the synthetic. Moment when he does transfer over to the new version, and she's like, Andy, what's your prime
What's
directive?
Your new prime directive?
And he's just like, or no, she's like, are you supposed to protect me or something? And you're not allowed me to get hurt. He's like, that's not my prime directive anymore. Whatever that moment was so good, because like in that second like you see Andy turn on to like that new version, the upgraded version. He is a completely different actor, although obviously not. But again, just that like, oh shit, like we're not as safe as we were like a second ago. Like we thought this was a good idea, and instead this is completely flipped on us. I thought that was such a good scene. I wish I could remember the exact quote, but it was so good.
She asks, what is your prime directive now, or what is your new prime directive? And he says, what is best for the company?
That's it.
And it was very chilling. It was very chilling to know suddenly you are not important to him. He doesn't need to kill you. He's not out to get you.
I don't need to kill you, but I don't need to save you either.
But he does not need to save them. So yes, it was very cool.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I'll let you go on to your acid bath now.
So we deal with Andy, and he's taking him through, and now I believe this is after she gets the chip out of Andy and they're back to taking care of each other again. I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And she has the gun which has aim assist, which would make her, as a noob with this pulse rifle, be able to hit very accurately.
I hate that.
It's
I have so many questions about that.
It's very cheesy. It's very dumb, but it does explain why she's able to shoot the alien without blowing a hole in the side of the ship.
I'll give you that, but this is 30 years before Aliens 2. Why did the technology get worse? Why don't those? He even says these are the guns the Space Marines use, and he's very familiar with them. Why do
those
the Space Marines
have a hell of a time killing those aliens?
Right? And why did they? Okay, so the smart guns actually have that technology in them. The mounted gun that Vasquez have, they use that auto aim technology. That's what the smart gun is all about.
Why don't everybody?
So I don't know. I don't know why doesn't everybody? Yeah, exactly. I guess because they're trained or something. Whatever.
Are they? We've seen that movie,
right? Well, they did that the Star Trooper training.
The Starship Trooper training.
Yeah,
they're squishing bugs. It's for democracy.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Anyway, I forgot what I was talking about. So
alien blood.
Okay, so they go in this tunnel. And okay, the moment they get onto the ship, I'm rewinding here. The moment they get onto this ship and they see the mouse floating in air and then it slams down and they say, what's that? Oh, that's the gravity. It's got to purge itself every so often. The moment they said that, I went, oh shit, they're not going to do this, are they? Because I know the real reason the alien has acid for blood is so that you can't just shoot it on a spaceship. It'll burn through the hole and kill you all.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, are they going to do this?
Why are they crawling if there's no gravity in that scene?
Well,
they're really struggling through that tiny little fit.
I kind of asked myself, they seem like if the gravity's off, just give yourself a push and float. I guess it's a tight fit. Whatever.
Okay, sure.
So
Moving
then
on.
the gravity's going on and off and everything, and they turn the gravity back on with a touch of a button. And it was like, oh, I think they're gonna do it. I think they're gonna do it. And then when Andy hands her the gun and says it's just to scare the alien away, it might work, I went, yep, they're gonna do it. And sure enough, they did it. They shoot the aliens, which explode in 0G, and the explosion stops and slowly rotates for no reason at all. The ship isn't rotating. The ship doesn't use centrifuge gravity. It has a gravity generator that purges itself. Gravity goes up and down, not spinning slowly. The explosion just stops. I guess, well, it did it with the Nostromo, right? The Nostromo blew up and just stopped, leaving a freaking alien space peanut in the middle. So let's do it with the acid, too. And then they go flying through this, and she's like, oh, I got to take a left turn. Let's just shoot the gun, and I'll push myself out of the way. Like shotguns in bad freaking cop movies that blow people back on their ass. Anybody who's ever fired a weapon knows that doesn't work. I'm really mad about all the physics in this movie, other than they sort of muted the space flight stuff outside. That was it. I give props for that. But it really bothered me.
Well, okay, now I'm gonna push back on you a little bit on that one, and I could be 100% wrong. Wouldn't a gun in space work like that? Like, wouldn't you? You would
have to fire a lot of rounds to get you to push. Like, she fired once and just went whoosh straight down. It doesn't work like that. Like, anybody who's fired a shotgun knows you get a little bit of a kick, but it's not this. It doesn't blow you back on your ass. And she's using it and like propelling herself across, and she's not supposed to be shooting the ship anyway. Like, you're worried you're going to blow a hole in the ship with your 226 caseless explosive rounds that they talk about and everything.
I think at that point I'm more worried about melting to acid than blowing a hole in the ship. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
You know what? I get that it was a cool thing to have them float by this acid, but I didn't like that the aliens were exploding when she shot them in the head, and the acid just stayed right there in this cloud. And then for some reason, they gave it a little spin. I don't even know what the spin was, but it all starts to rotate around the center of this room. Mm-hmm. And then in the end, they turn on the gravity anyway and blow a hole in the ship, and then the elevator just seals it. I was like, what was that all that for? What?
For a fun sequence, it was super cool to look at, man.
Yeah.
And also,
that's not even the part I hate the most about this movie.
We'll get there, I'm sure.
We can guess. I also was like, why does there have to be so many aliens coming in at that point? Like, do 1 or 2 aliens so you have to avoid the blood. They offed like a dozen aliens, and this gun never ran out of bullets, even though they talked about it going to run out of bullets any time now.
40%, 20%.
It just kept going down, but they kept firing, and then Andy just kept firing it too. Like, who cares?
Did it seem like she was firing like large bursts of gunfire, but one bullet would hit an alien in the head?
Yeah, because she doesn't have great
pop one in the head, but she's going like at a time.
Yeah. Well, maybe they peppered the body and then they just show the headshot, right? Yeah. Who knows? I don't know. The whole thing was pretty wonky. The auto assist aim thing was brutal. I didn't like it because it totally trashes on aliens like later in the franchise. I liked it
because it made a useless person able to kill an alien. But I didn't like it because we see Marines later that don't have that technology, and like, just leave that line out of like, oh, it's a prototype. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's on this ship because we're developing things on, like, if they've got the alien blood, it would make sense that this ship is a weapons research facility. This is a prototype. This new kid is like, I'm familiar with weapons and they don't have this. That answers the question right there. And instead he's like, this is what Marines use. Like, no, they're not. We've seen Marines use the guns and this is not it.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, it works in the fact, again, if it's like a reboot and the 20-something-year-olds are going to watch this crazy alien movie that they've never seen before. It doesn't work for us old-timers who have seen all these movies and know that this just doesn't add up in the series of events that these movies take place in, right? Yeah. So it's a hit and miss, and I feel like that's a lot of this movie is like, if this is the first alien movie you're seeing, it's great. There's a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of fun. And you don't see a lot of plot holes that are there because of the other movies. There's still honestly major problems, but not as many if you haven't seen the other movies.
honestly, I've seen 7 Alien movies. I still thought this was pretty great. It's got holes for sure.
It's definitely got holes.
But this is a ton of fun. And this one brings the series back to or not back even, for the first time, it gets the aliens scary for me. Like none of the other movies am I actually all that scared of the aliens. This is the first one where I'm like, holy shit, like face huggers are terrifying.
Face huggers are scary.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of the aliens were.
Yeah, none of the aliens were all that scary. They were kind of out in the open crawling. They weren't lurking up on people. They could see them coming from a mile away.
If you're an apex predator, you don't really need to be in the shadows.
Yeah, but that's
those apex predators lost to a 20-year-old who has no gun experience. So they aren't that apex, are they?
Well, I mean, humans with guns are pretty much apex. So, I mean, we beat them in that category. But generally speaking, these are like the perfect
Have you seen Aliens?
Okay, chat's kind of losing its mind a little bit about the guns in space. So, yes, firing an automatic weapon under sustained fire would push you in the opposite direction that you're firing. But if you're putting it on your right shoulder, you would spin in a circle for one. She would have to put it directly at her center of mass.
She would have
to do sustained fire because you're shooting a bullet with this amount of mass that's pushing against your entire body. So yeah, it'll put
we also don't know
sustained fire in one direction.
You actually don't know the size of the bullet or the amount of
I don't know the size of the bullet, but she had 10% or less in the gun, so it was one more burst because they kept counting it down. It was like a burst of fire was about 10%, and that's what she shot. And when I was watching it hit the aliens, it was one bullet hitting the alien in a whole burst. So I don't even know if it's one bullet that just sounds like a burst. I don't know, but it just didn't add up to me because she fires it and just immediately just flies backwards, straight back, even though she has the gun on her shoulder. Like it didn't line up. And I don't like when they use those kind of physics from guns and stuff. So yeah, that's why I didn't like that. Sorry.
And cut from the scene.
There you go. Yeah, you can edit that out of the other one.
No, that's fine. Let's move from that disastrous scene to another.
Yes. Dan, do you have anything good to go back to? Because we've been hitting hard on the negative. Do you have anything good?
I'm ready to go hard negative.
That's why I want Dan to kind of give us something to lean into here.
I'm a little shocked that runs is negative. This one, like Will being negative on sci-fi, kind of makes sense at this point. But
wow,
let's be honest.
I'm no horror movie hater like you, Dan.
Well, I mean, give me an actual horror movie. We'll see what we do. Don't.
Okay. Wow.
I feel like this movie is. Do I have a specific scene that I really liked? I don't know. Overall, up until you get to the last, like the birth, let's say, up until you get to the birth, most of this movie was fun. Dumb fun, but fun. And it really did work for me as kind of a creep fest, which most of the Aliens movies have not been up to this point. If this is your first Alien movie, I think you have a lot of fun with this movie. And then you kind of watch everything else, you go, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like, maybe Alien 2 holds up pretty well. Aliens, sorry, holds up pretty well. But like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like 90% of this movie is just good, clean fun. And then you get that last scene and you're just like, where the did this come from?
Well, I can explain the last scene, even though I hate it, and we'll get there. But I do think that this movie pulls from everything that's come from before it and tries to do the best that it can. Yeah. Minus these plot holes. I think we could have had some better writing on some of these plot holes that we talked about. But like they took the goo, which I didn't want, but if we're gonna swallow this pill,
that's the direction it's going.
I like that they were like, okay, they're trying to they genetically pulled this out of the alien. So humans now took the goo out of the alien instead of getting it from the engineers, which then humans put it into a person. And we ended up getting a baby that came out looking like an engineer. Somewhat like an engineer.
Yeah.
Right?
But you're right. It did resemble
as well.
It had a resemblance to the engineer. And I think that's what they were trying to do, was trying to like complete this and say that, you know, the goo was derived from engineers. Humans stole the goo, adapted it, and humans were made from the goo from engineers, and we reversed it. And it's all kind of like a big cycle. So there's humans, there's engineers, and there's aliens, and it's all going to kind of get turned around in this thing in whatever way you kind of bake it. Whatever. I thought it was stupid. I wish we could just do away with the goo altogether, but we kind of have to go there.
I don't disagree, but we're here now, and this is what they're going with. So be it. I really liked Alien better. Like after 1 and 2, when it's like this is a race and a colony. Like okay, that I'm all in. And then it kind of just kept going, and it got weirder and weirder. And I don't know why they feel the need to have a more highly evolved version at the end of all these movies now. Like that, it's never worked. Like there's not a single one where I'm like, wow, that's cool, and they're trying to recreate it. It's always bad. It's always the worst part of the movie.
Yeah.
And yet they just keep trying it. It's like, why? The aliens are scary enough. And they're already supposed to be like the perfect organism. Why are they evolving further? Why are we trying this route? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I wonder a little bit. I mean, this movie in general doesn't bring up a lot of big questions like Prometheus or even Covenant, but it does, delve slightly into the goo at the end there. And I felt like this almost fits in with my theory of how it all works and goes together. It kind of made me think of Covenant again when David goes to the home planet, in theory, and destroys all of the engineers, but the engineers don't look like the engineers we've seen. And that's because those were like maybe the engineers that weren't biologically advanced from the goo. Perhaps they experimented on themselves to get these bigger, bulkier, whiter engineers that we kind of see coming out of this human at the end of Romulus. So to me, I still am of the thought that alien xenomorph in some way or another still existed prior to engineers creating it, prior to David creating it, and that they all had a hand in finding the goo from the essence of the aliens, taking it from them and experimenting on it to create humans, to create the engineer elites, and all of the things in between. And that's how I feel like it all kind of makes sense. And David even experiments to get his perfect xenomorph, right? Which I believe maybe there was a perfect xenomorph out there before, but nobody had seen it prior to David doing it in the chronological order of the films. But it's still still sounds valid and covers all of like the major holes of like, why is that ancient ship there with the alien eggs? Because that was maybe earlier engineers just discovering and harnessing these eggs, and then they'll get to work on them to create their, crazy jacked engineers later down the line.
You're saying the xenomorphs came first, and the engineers used them to create humans and their technology based around the goo, and that xenomorphs are humanity's god.
Xenomorphs, I mean, I wouldn't say God, but creator, yeah, right.
Well,
I mean, you'd have to believe in God.
I just want to get back to Space Jesus again, because that was great.
Space Jesus still is in there, but in that way, you worship your creator. I guess if that means God, great. But in this world or this franchise, it's more of a creationist story, not a God.
Right. Right. Where did things come from? Not necessarily religious factions, but yeah.
But yes, everything is a subspecies of alien, and now we're rebreeding. Humans, just like we'll do it with anything. We'll mix our DNA with anything to try to make ourselves better or get ahead, or just because we want a good time.
Well, the alien that was born out of the pregnant woman looked more alien to start, and kind of going along with your theory, was healing its alienness into more of an engineer by the end. Like it had those big, like, I don't know what you call them, the things sticking out of the aliens' backs, right? Like
the weird
the little
tube
things. They were short,
and they were like shrinking, and they were starting to heal over and almost turn into like shoulder blades,
popping himself into place and stuff. Yeah.
So we never got to see him like his final evolution form. But my guess is, he was turning into an engineer, essentially. Like, he was healing beyond the aliens into what the engineers become.
And
I don't know if that has to do with the whole theory long term, but it was kind of like, oh, that's actually kind of an interesting take on it.
Why is it when anybody injects themselves with the goo, their body changes, but their mind never does? She was still the same person mentally. She was screaming and freaking out like any sane person would. But she wasn't changed mentally. Neither was anybody in Covenant when they got infected or anything. Their body mutates and gives birth to an alien of some sort, but their minds never changed. And I always think, wouldn't it change all of you. And in this one, she stabs herself in the neck, and the only thing that changes is the fetus inside her. She didn't change at all, other than she was her breasts were lactating black goo, which was disgusting and totally unnecessary. It was just grossing me out. The thing trying to breastfeed off of her was disgusting and unnecessary. Like, it was really gross. That's where I feel like they were pulling from Alien Resurrection by just grossing me the F out. It was unnecessarily disgusting.
Well, this is the director who did Evil Dead, right? Like, that might just be his
and
bag.
I appreciated the gory, scary stuff that he did in this movie, but that sequence was not
a whole new level.
Yeah, it was just a whole new. At least it wasn't hairy or full of
So the aliens,
I was like,
no
Dad, there's not enough hair.
Thank
not enough hair in this movie.
Yeah.
The aliens, like, I still like to think of the aliens as more of a parasite than a goo that transforms your body entirely. And in that sense, it would make the parasite would just live inside you and break out, as opposed to corrupting your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted
a little scarier that way. To be honest, I think it's scarier.
Yeah, I think so too.
Up until the end.
I want it to be just an alien that latches onto things, and it will give birth to something that takes on its features, like we saw the dog alien, ox alien, like we've seen in spin-offs that aren't canon to this, but we have a pred alien that comes out because it latches onto a predator's face. That was actually really cool when that pred alien pops out in that movie. So those are more interesting to me. And I've, in novels and stuff, they've had flying aliens because they latched onto the face of a bird and they just get those attributes. That's more interesting to me. And having the life cycle of the aliens slowly change as they interact with other species, rather than this goo that radically changes everything, and androids can mess with it and change it up and stuff. It's just too messy. It's too messy.
I'm really disappointed going backwards, because I remember when we watched Alien 3, that was the one thing that I really liked in the movie, was like, oh, when they interact with a different species, they become a different species. And it's really disappointing that now that we're at currently the end of the franchise, and we never really saw that again. Like, they're always evolving into something totally different, but they're not like taking on the properties of what they're seeing. They're just kind of like, oh, look, now it's a big white dude. Like, okay, like, sure.
And that was the goo transformation, not the clean transformation that I like either.
Or the cloning, or
cloning,
a whole
and
bunch
stuff
of
like the cloning, all those weird ones, all the
all
weird
I want
ways
is
you get
face huggers on different animals.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
I did have a thought though too, that Rook and that research vessel was trying to get this goo so that they could make humans more durable and more space travel worthy and living on these other planets in these colonizations. I thought that was a really cool idea. And seeing the colony at the beginning of the movie was cool because it's like never sun there. There's no sun. It's dark and gloomy. Everybody hates their lives. That was really interesting. And then I thought, wow, that Rook is trying to do what they actually achieved in Resurrection. By cloning Ripley, they got the perfect human specimen in Ripley 2.0, and she has acid for blood and a killer instinct and can basketball hoop for days. And I was like, they did it. They established, like, a few years later, they did it. They achieved. And so I was pretty pumped about that it all kind of connects.
I was wondering how you did that with a straight face. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But
it was like 400 years later, but still.
I'm not wrong. They did it.
Do you think human life can actually live on a planet that doesn't get sunlight? Like, there wasn't, I thought there wasn't a sun at first, and I was like, okay, what on earth? How do you get heat?
Half our audience right now hasn't seen sun in a week, man. These people never touch grass. Yes, absolutely.
The planet still gets sun, though.
Without sun. No
Where's
problem.
the oxygen coming from?
Fucking people are like, pass me the Cheetos. Let's do this. Yeah, we could do without the sun. It's not an issue.
If you don't have sun, you don't have plants, you don't have photosynthesis, you don't have oxygen.
It's got
Where are they
sun. It's just got cloud cover that keeps it from ever happening.
Would still kill the plants.
They're a hardy. They're a hardy.
Humans are going to kill the plants anyways. Who cares?
I'm also wondering, like, was this planet ever going to be inhabitable, or were they just mining it for resources? And that's why, like, people were just like being forced to stay there. Like, this is like this horrible company again, just screwing the everyday person who desperately needs a job and will take on this. And then they're stuck there, and then their family's stuck there until these bright-eyed, bushy-tailed youngsters take off on one of their haulers to make their own way and find heaven. I don't know. That's what I got out of it.
Do you think the planet Jaeger, or whatever it is, do you think that even exists? Or do you think that's literally just hope because humans need hope or else they'll just kill themselves? Is it just a, hey, if you do enough service, you can go to Jaeger and it's a beautiful planet, blah, blah, blah? Or is it just a complete lie by the company?
That seems like a big lie to keep up. I never thought about that idea. The company just makes up an apple on a string for these people to keep churning for.
Well, I mean, you see them just like, oh no, plans have changed. Like you hit your goal, cool.
Yeah,
Here's a
that
new
lady
goal.
at
Go
the
fuck yourself.
desk didn't even break stride. She's like, nope, your things are refunded, and we got to do this. Reset.
Well,
you got to go again.
Yeah,
and it's not even like,
potentially-
oh, the plans have changed and this has happened. It's like, oh, you hit your quota, that can't happen, and they like change it on the spot. It's not like, oh, they changed at some point while you weren't paying attention. No, I'm doing it literally as you're like, you hit your goal, cool, new goal.
Yeah, she was the WI officer there, maybe second best written character in the movie. So I really appreciated her.
You're such a dick sometimes.
What? You understood her motives? She was clear, concise. She had minimal screen time, and you knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, it was a well planned out character. You even saw like the trinkets on her desk, and you knew she was like half Karen. Like, it was, yeah, she was there. How'd you guys like the way that Rain ends up killing the space baby?
Like every alien movie ever?
Yeah, blown into space, except instead of the alien being on the grapple hook, she was on the grapple hook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you gotta have a twist, I guess.
The grappling hook is around the lever, the last lever she needs to lock. She gets flown into outer space. That doesn't hit the lever off.
Right.
She starts climbing up the thing. That doesn't hit the lever off. But she goes, and that turns the lever off. I'm just like,
yeah.
No.
Okay, one thing I didn't notice, and maybe this has some effect on it, is that when she is hanging off of the rope outside of the ship, she's actually outside of the artificial gravity well. And so it's just the suction of the air running and blowing all the dust out that's actually pulling her down. There's no actual weight from her, is what it's supposed to be. She does
climb in quite easily.
She does climb in real easily. And if you see her, she gives herself a pull, and the rope actually kind of goes slack as she floats up into the ship. I didn't notice that the first or second time around, but there is something to that. But you're right. She gets flung out that door at full speed with all the air and sand.
Yep.
And it doesn't trip the lever, and then she gives it a tug. And then it's, yeah.
That's all I needed.
No good.
Okay, I will say, though, that scene, when she's hanging out in space, and you can see the spaceship like exploding in the background, like as it's slowly crashing into, that was damn cool.
Yeah.
Like it was just a visual, but that 1000% worked for me.
I have no idea if the rings would actually look like that up close. I imagine actual rings around like Saturn or something to be vast amounts of space in between the pieces, much like we portray asteroid belts as being clusters of rocks when there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of miles between each piece of rock in the asteroid belt. I don't know, but it looked so damn cool as it slowly fed into this conveyor belt of ice and death. It was cool looking. So I don't care.
Yeah.
If you can find an alien needle in an ocean, you could probably find a planet with a thick belt, you know?
Sure, there you go. That's right. We're playing the odds on this movie, sure.
Exactly. It's not the worst thing. It's not the worst thing I saw.
So, I mean, for me, there was tons of plot holes in this movie. Acting was on a big scale. There were people who, well, you know what? I wouldn't say there was any bad acting per se, but there was a lot of not so great, and there was some bad character writing in this. A lot of bad writing in general, but there were some gems. There were gems scattered throughout of this. I always say the first 2/3 of this movie, I'm very happy with. I enjoy a lot. Even with the plot holes, it was super, super fun. Once the acid bath thing starts happening, I'm kind of just, it's too much. It's too much breaking laws of physics for me. It takes me really out of it. She's floating up and down the elevator. That doesn't really make sense when the gravity gets turned on and she's kind of being tossed up still and slowly makes this rotation around. And then and
then the alien just cradles her with her tail. I'm
just
like,
cradles her and doesn't kill her. Like every other alien would have just like slashed him in half. Whoosh.
Or just let her fall. Like,
yeah.
okay, don't even need to kill you. Like they're not killing to eat.
It just keeps getting worse and worse, and then you end with the thing that bothered me the most about Resurrection, aside from its entire look, was this alien humanoid baby, which nobody really liked. Why do we have to bring that back just to tie it in with the engineers? We have the goo. You've gone far enough. We don't need to do the engineers. If anything, have like an engineer fly in on a spaceship or something. I don't care. Just don't do it. It just got worse. But the first 2/3 of the movie were so much fun for me, and I enjoyed it a lot. And there were some amazing sequences even still after that. But yeah, lots of plot holes, man.
Honest to God, if she'd given birth and like you went through the exact same sequence and it had just been a regular ass alien, it wouldn't have been as big, but it just like a regular xenomorph, I probably would have been better with that even.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but then you don't tie it into the engineers, and they really wanted that.
That's all it was. They wanted to tie it into the engineers and go full circle.
I'm shocked. Oh my God. All right. I'm already the most positive person on this franchise so far, and I feel like that's not changing after tonight. So, what the hell? I'll go first, I guess. Actually, you know what? You're both going to be negative. Let one of you go first, and I'll be positive, and then the next person goes negative.
First. I'll go first.
My sandwich fluctuated. I got to do some math. So
oh, damn. Okay, I'll go first. It'll be rough, but we'll go. Romulus is an alien movie that I watched with my 2 eyes. And I'm going to be honest, I fell asleep in the first half hour, and I had to rewatch it. And so let's start there, shall we? I feel like Alvarez, the director-writer, has done a handful of projects with mixed success. But I feel like, much like the Evil Dead reboot, remake, sequel, I don't know what you even call it, he does a great job of mimicking. He can really mimic. He does his homework. He watches the movies. He captures. He knows how to capture the mood, the feeling, the locations, the costuming, the practical effects he seems to really love, which played well in Evil Dead, plays really well in this movie. He has a really good eye for mimicking what others have done. But when it comes to actually writing original content, I feel like he really falls short. And we see that in poor character development. And beyond some fun scares, we see it in finishing the movie on a solid note of like, oh yeah, I just came out of this movie and I'm pumped. I can't wait to talk and rave about this movie. I just felt that he just tried to mix in everything, and the cocktail turned out real sour at the end. There was some great moments, but it just didn't come together for me, and I just couldn't feel like fully invested. That said, some great acting. Andy did a fantastic job. I think the most of the cast did fine work with what words they were given to work with. What else can I say? There's just a lot of weird stuff. Run will probably talk more about the weird physics and the odd sequences of events. The facehuggers were a highlight. I loved facehuggers. I love facehuggers throughout this series. They keep me on the edge because I don't want that in my mouth. And Alvarez really, really went for it, and I appreciated that. That was gross. So overall, the genre, it's got some scares, but I feel like this was kind of more of a heist movie, which is kind of fun too, because again, it's a little bit of a different genre, and every Alien movie kind of touches on a different genre a little bit. So I appreciated that. The acting, fine. The writing, I've mentioned. The direction, again, I feel like Alvarez has potential, but he's more of a mimic right now than his own solid direction. Like, he doesn't have his own feel for things. He just takes and replicates what he's seen. So will this movie hold up? Yeah, I think so. If you've never seen an Alien movie, I think this is a great entry-level movie. Is it a bad movie? No, there's definitely lots of fun scenes. Brian will talk about the bad ones. Dan will talk about the good ones. And I'll just give you my score. It's a 70 out of 100.
That's not as bad as I was anticipating. Better than some of your I can see all the scores you've given to the other movies, and that's what, third highest, fourth highest?
Yeah, it's probably pretty close to Alien 3.
I was gonna say you gave Alien 3 a better score than this, and that hurts my soul. Okay.
There's less. There was less world building in Alien 3 that needed explanation. And I felt like because this was like a cocktail of just pulling everything in, it just couldn't possibly explain it all away. You know what I mean? So that really dampened it a lot for me.
I almost wish they just hadn't tried for a lot of it. Just leave it alone and just be like, no, it's just aliens on a ship. That's all we need. That's all we want. That's all we're here for. Good enough.
Yeah, and at its core, it's that. But unfortunately, they touch on all that other
stuff. It worked with the Predator when they went back to Predator Prey. They just told a nice story about the Predator, and it was fantastic. It was a hit. It was a great movie. Why couldn't we do that?
Anyway,
I feel like they tried awfully hard. But anyways, all right.
Tried. Oh yeah.
Oh, you going, Dan?
I was going to go, and then you can end us off on a sour note. So we get negative, positive, negative, potentially. I don't know. Maybe you'll be more positive than I think you're going to be. I enjoyed this movie. Like, when I think of an alien movie, I always go back to the very first one where it's just like, you feel a little claustrophobic, there's an alien, he's chasing you on the ship, and that's what most of this movie felt like. Now, there was a lot more aliens we found out later on, but for the good chunk of the movie, because I even remember thinking, like, if there was this many people on this ship, why is there only one alien? And then we do see that there are more later on. But for a chunk of this movie, you've got a bunch of facehuggers, which are terrifying. You've got the one alien, which is pretty scary. You've got Andy, their one friend, being corrupted, and you're not really sure where he lands as far as they go. Like, he's kind of working with them enough to save himself, but not really their friend anymore. And the turn when he goes is pretty scary. This is the first Alien movie I've seen out of all of them that was actually tense and kind of gave me what I wanted going into this franchise. I hadn't seen most of these movies when I started this franchise. So the ones that I had seen are like, oh, it's one alien on a ship hunting people down and it's scary. And it took me 7 movies to get to this point. But once we got here, I actually enjoyed this quite a bit. Is it perfect? No, it's absolutely not a perfect film. I'm not going to give it that high of a score. It's not. It kind of does the same thing Prey did, where they kind of took you back to their roots, but I don't think it did it nearly as well as Prey did. It didn't for me, at least. There are too many issues with this movie, and not even necessarily plot holes, but just things they tried to cram in that were completely unnecessary. And unfortunately, you're left with the sour taste in your mouth that is the alien evolution engineer, whatever you want to call that baby thing at the end of the movie. That being the last note is really, really unfortunate because I feel like a lot of the other things in this movie are quite strong and I really did enjoy. We mentioned it before. Andy's a really great actor in this. He did a really good job. I apologize. That's not whoever the actor is that played Andy did a great job.
David Johnson.
Thank you very much. David Johnson did a great job. The aliens themselves are terrifying. The music, the sound effects, the lack of sound effects, all were fantastic. I think some of the characters are a little weak. The writing is a little weak, but I think the actors all did a pretty good job with what they were given. I had fun. And realistically, that's all I'm looking for in an alien movie. I gave it an 85.
Okay, so Will, you gave it a 70. Dan, you gave it an 85.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. So what can I say about Romulus other than it ended badly, started out great? I think I always tell people I like the first 2/3 of this movie. That's why the fun factor for me was kind of like a 70. Like it was a 66 out of 100, but there were still some redeeming parts in the last third that I found enjoyable. It's just the last third kind of offended me. And we've been there. We've been to alien babies and we've been with the engineers and we've done the goo thing and nobody really likes that. And it had to go there because for whatever reason, they wanted to take from everything in the franchise. And I can appreciate that. So I guess that's cool. If we're going to have this all be canon, they took from everything and they made a movie. The first 2/3 of this movie were so much fun and so entertaining that I do enjoy this. I like watching it. I will watch it again. I will probably watch it again rather soon because this is still one of, if not my favorite franchises of all time. The plot had a lot of holes in it. Took me out a lot of times. The special effects were amazing. Almost never took me out. They were incredible. I just thoroughly enjoyed watching the sequences and trying to figure out how they were made, and then I would go watch behind the scenes stuff to see how they were made, and I enjoyed it. It was incredible. The Rook scene was the flaw on that front, and for me it was a rather big one. I also did not like the final scene with the baby alien guy falling out, getting in her face, and trying to crack her little windshield. That looked stupid to me. It was the thing I hate most in movies is when they have this huge climatic ending and they use special effects and blow the roof off with the CGI stuff. I hate when they do that. I hate when we have these weird, crazy CGI monsters at the end. It's dumb. So I really didn't like that. As far as the direction, I think Will stated it really well. I think it was really good. He doesn't have a voice of his own quite yet, but he does a great job of mimicking other people. So that was cool. The best part of this film was the sound by far. I give this a perfect score when it comes to sound and scoring. The sound effects were spot on. The music building up. The music, like they gave music to many of the characters and themes. Like they have a Rain musical theme. They have an Andy musical theme, and those are actually reversed of one another, one's played backwards. And I just think that is so amazing when they go to such detail to do that. These huge compound sounds that they put through to make different things happening. And then the balls to cut the sound completely during certain moments, knowing that the absence of sound is amazing. If only we could have gotten the absence of sound during that stupid line that Andy delivers. Yeah, that was terrible. Why he just so uncalled for. So yeah, lots of fun. I think it holds up. It was a good movie and all that overall. I think it could have been so much better, but I think a lot of this franchise is just going to be in a place that I just don't like, and I'm going to have to learn to live with it. I'm hoping we see an end to the David trilogy. I know that they have talked about it and that Romulus has put the franchise in a place where they're thinking about doing that. We don't have it specifically yet, but I know they'd like to. And I know that we do have a sequel coming to Romulus. I'm hoping for more Andy and less engineers there. We'll see. And I don't know if the David trilogy could wrap up and make sense of any of this. But this is the final movie in the franchise, and this is the final score I'm going to be giving for an Alien film anytime soon. And this movie, for me, gets a 76 out of 100.
Nice. Okay. So you guys weren't as... You guys were talking super negatively the entire time. You didn't actually come out as hard as I thought.
Potential lost, man. Potential not reached. It was unfortunate. That's why I'm so harsh on this.
Totally fair.
It's a decently watchable movie. No doubt. It's just there's so many problems within it, within the greater franchise of it. Although that said, I still think this is a better standalone watch than maybe Prometheus, because Prometheus should have been a not Alien movie, and then it could stand alone.
Yeah.
Right. So, and
that would change the course of this film, and I think I would like all three portions of this instead of just the first two.
Right.
And our scores, as usual, run into the same fallacy that we're going to continue having on the franchise rating, which is franchises don't become franchises when they suck, except for Highlander and Home Alone. And so we're going to get decent
Furious,
scores.
Transformers.
You're just proving my point further. Those are the exceptions to the rule. Okay. I don't know. I stopped watching Transformers after like 3. I was like, it's just Michael Bay explosions on a loop here at this point.
Explosions.
So franchises happen because franchises make money, and they're going to put more money into franchises because they make money, and so you're going to get a respectable movie almost every time. You're going to have scores of 50 and up most of the time here on the R rating, because they're franchises, you know.
Mm-hmm. I also would like to remind, with my ratings, I'm always thinking of the genre of the movie itself, and I'm rating within the genre, so that I feel every movie has a fair shot. Yeah, I'm just reiterating maybe for the audience that we're giving the movie a fair shot within its genre, so that it can stand up to other franchises and other genres. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, oh, I despise sci-fi, so bupkis to this, I'm just going to zero it out. That doesn't make any sense.
I think you're right. We all do that to a degree, and I think that's the way to go here because I'm going to have no trouble putting things side by side that are complete different genres.
So there we have, after all is said and done, Aliens in second place at 72.
Still
now
on
we're
my
going to finish off the
asterisks.
Mad Max tomorrow. Next week. So hopefully that'll be either 71 or 69 or something, so it's not tied with Predator.
I hope it goes up 2 points.
Oh, just so there's another tie on this.
Yeah.
You know what? Even now that there's a tie with there being this many movies, doesn't bother me as much as when it was the second franchise. Oh, there's a tie already. I'm like,
double tie.
Cool. I'm shocked that I have the green on this one. I'm shocked that I have the highest score. I guess it's because Brian is more passionate about it. So when it's bad, it hits him harder than it does me. But I really just assumed, this being your favorite franchise, that you would be way up there. Does this surprise you at all?
Just because it's his favorite franchise doesn't mean he can't critique a movie.
Well, and Predator is my second favorite franchise, and it's down there at 64. I don't know why Evil Dead got such a high score, I guess.
So this is why you're leaving, is because you're like, I did Predator, I did Alien, I don't want to watch these other movies. They're talking about doing comedies. Screw that. I'm going to watch something else.
Then you got to remember, certain movies kind of carry for me too. Alien and Aliens is by far my favorite in this franchise, and things kind of go downhill from there. But there's such good moments, and the genre is so good for me too. I mean, that's why I did adjust for Evil Dead, because the horror is not my genre at all, right? But when you break that movie down, Evil Dead gets a pretty darn good score from me.
There's a reason why Evil Dead is renowned as one of the best horror movies.
Yeah.
I mean, it does a lot of things right. The first Evil Dead, it did a lot of things right, and it was very original in its time. So it stands the test of time. Some of the other ones, obviously, they took a turn to more of a comedic slapstick route, so it varies there. But like that first movie, I think would get highest marks from a lot of people who enjoy horror.
So when you talk about scoring based on the genre, I agree with that to an extent, where it's like I can put Predator in roughly the same category as I can put The Godfather. Not because Predator is as good as The Godfather, but because when I want to watch an action movie, Predator's a really good action movie. And when I want to watch a crime drama, Godfather's a really good crime drama. So it works in that category. The difference for me, and you can say whether or not you feel the same, is when I'm rating a movie, I'm still rating the movie based on me. So whether or not it's Evil Dead, let's say, one of the best horror movies, I still don't like it. So I'm not going to give it a really good score because it did a lot of things right. It doesn't work for me, and that's kind of why I'm doing this show, is so I can be like, these are my thoughts on a
fun rating in there. Did I have fun? Did it mix well? And that fun factor swings my scores massively on these movies. It's always a huge deciding factor.
Which is what happened on this movie, to be honest, is just I had so much fun with this movie for 80% of it, that I just was like, yeah, no, I can look past some of the plot holes where I'm like, wait a second, a planet with no sun, that's weird. Wait a second, alien blood floating in space, that's weird. Wait a second, a ship that was evaporated 20 years ago and nothing has moved in space. That's completely alien bonkers. Yeah. But it's like they get you where they need to get you to have fun with it. It's like having a DeLorean that goes back in time. It doesn't make a lick of sense, but it's a fun movie. So you just kind of go, yep, okay.
Yeah, and Real Bubba Hotep makes a good point in chat. It's not just the genre. You have to think about the year it came out, the trending movies at that time, and the impact it has as a whole. These are all things that I do think about when I'm rating these. I think about what technology did they have to work with back then when it came to practical effects. And a lot of times that's to the detriment of newer movies that fall back on the easy out of using CGI to fill in something. And if they don't absolutely use that CGI to perfection, I grade them very harshly. And in this movie, Romulus, they used a lot of practical effects for most of it. And I think you can't bring Rook/Ash into this film without CGI, without computer aid assisted, right? And so I do give them props for trying. I just think that they didn't do a good job. And so I was pretty harsh on that.
Yeah, and there was other CGI moments within the film that work just fine. It's just we are not at a point where we can replicate a human. It is
Mhm.
it's just it is what it is, right? Just like we're not at a point that we can have synthetic beings with souls. It's just not. We're not there just yet. We're getting there. You know, Andy was really close. Uh, but I feel like and this is so personal for all of us how we rate, obviously, but and you can tell I hounded on the script so much in this movie because
Yeah.
the script to me is the core of the movie. It's the essence of the movie. Without it, you're lost. Without it, there's nothing. And so if that isn't right from the get, it just blows up into problems throughout.
Right,
And
it's
so
the
for
bones
me,
of the film.
I always that will always trigger my rating a little bit harsher. And even if the movie's bad, I've watched plenty of bad movies. I really enjoyed some of the Highlander franchise movies, but they're not good movies, and I rated them accordingly, right? But I still had a ton of fun.
Right.
That said, when I do have fun, I'm naturally going to rate things a little gentler because, like Dad said, if you're enjoying it, you want to rate it higher. But I do try to keep that in check a little bit because I know I just love bad movies.
All right, that's our rating of Alien Romulus. And with that, that concludes the Alien franchise. What do you think about where it lands on the list for us? Does it sound about right? Should it be a little higher, a little lower? Leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. We record our rating on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern over at twitch.tv/The Mongoolie Show. So if you want to head over there, hit the follow button. You can be part of the conversation live as it's happening. Or if you prefer to watch our rating here on YouTube, that's fine too. Hit the like button, hit subscribe so you know when more videos come out. They usually come out Monday afternoons, so check back then for more content from our rating. We're gonna be doing Furiosa to finish off the Mad Max category, and then after that, we're gonna be delving into the Jurassic Park movies. So you'll definitely wanna check that out. But for all of us here at our rating, I hope you're safe, I hope you're well. We'll catch you in the next one.